Hey everyone, welcome back to the FPBcast. Mike Szvetitz, Gerry, Ahern here with you. And going into week 8 of the college football season, week 7 in the NFL, we just wrapped up another, the Jets, the Eagles, the Giants, and then college football. Got to talk about the Alabama-Tennessee game and some really what we thought would be good matchups on paper, like Michigan-Penn State, turned out to be a rout for the Wolverines. So we're going to wrap up last week's action, college football and NFL, look ahead to this week coming up with some other big games. But Gerry, it felt like starting college football. It felt like last week in college football and in the NFL, I don't know if we've experienced a bigger early season in the NFL week than we did last week with some of the implications that we're still riding with games, but also in college football. There was 3 top 25 matchups and 2, including in the top 10, that were really kind of shook up a lot of the structure. And meanwhile, number 2, Ohio State, is on a bye week, kind of on the outside looking in on some of this stuff when it comes to the rankings, but also the Heisman Trophy race that we'll talk about. But your impressions starting off of last football or the last weekend of college football, and what stuck out to you, and kind of where are we at now going into really only 4 or 5 weeks left in the college football season.
Yeah, I mean, we knew going in it was probably the best week we were going to see in terms of top 10, top 25 matchups. Tennessee, Alabama certainly delivered with Hendon Hooker, 385 yards, 5 touchdowns against the Tide. Most points ever allowed by an Alabama team, I believe. Most points ever allowed by a Nick Saban team. Nick made some tactical mistakes. We saw a lot of things I didn't think we would see. You, on the other hand, predicted that way back when, before the season started. So props to you for being right.
That's once in my life.
So that was the headliner, obviously, 52-49, won on a knuckleball field goal after a missed field goal. So field goal kickers are, once again, college football coaches' favorite guys.
Especially in Alabama.
Going around the horn, I think Georgia really solidified itself as number 1 by just trouncing Vandy. You mentioned Michigan, Penn State. I think we saw a little bit more how much we can believe in Michigan as they move into the top 4, potentially into a college football playoff spot. I mean, Blake Corum is a tremendous impact player as a running back and just continues to, he took that game over himself and really went from being fairly tight to being a blowout. And then, of course, he had Utah protecting their home field against USC in another shootout. I think both those teams are pretty darn good. And I think we're going to see some more pretty interesting Pac-12 action this week. But those are kind of my college football headlines from last weekend.
No question. Obviously Tennessee, Alabama, the way that game was played, I believe it was the most points scored on an Alabama team since 1907. Swanee scored 54 against them.
You're right. You're right again.
I'm right again. All right, the podcast is over, everybody. We're going to go home. We close the kitchen.
Take your wins and move on.
That's right. So that was an amazing game. Saban botched it. There were some questionable calls, but again, it was both sides. I think I was really impressed with. We knew that Hendon Hooker was good. I saw him at Virginia Tech when I was with the Richmond Times-Dispatch, covering the ACC. Saw him there. Transfers to Tennessee, and all the kid has done is just win. And not only win, protects the football. He threw his first interception of the season this past weekend, but 1 interception, 15 touchdowns on the season. He leads the country in I think Tennessee leads or second in the country in points scored per game and passing yards per game. I mean, these guys are putting up some serious numbers with Josh Heupel's offense. We know he could play when he was at Oklahoma in the late 90s, early 2000s, and what he did at UCF before he came to Tennessee, can put up some points. Nick Saban's defense did not look like a Nick Saban defense. And, obviously he got on him this week. I think the biggest deal that came out of this weekend, though, was the Heisman race. I thought it was CJ Stroud's to lose, and it still kind of is. But when you're not playing, Ohio State's on a bye. That's great to get rest and all stuff. But when you have a game like Hendon Hooker had, now he's in the spotlight. CJ Stroud's not even playing. So all eyes are on Hooker in Tennessee, and he goes out and delivers those 5 touchdown passes, looks really great. And then it's just one of those deals where last week CJ Stroud was minus 130 to win, the Heisman, and now he's back at plus 100. And here comes Hooker going from 1,100 to 500 now, closing the gap. And I think And Caleb Williams, even though they lost, if USC had beaten Utah, Caleb Williams would be right up in that conversation as well, because all he did was throw almost 400 yards and 5 touchdowns and no interceptions.
Well, right. And they went on a gutsy call by Whittingham to go for 2. Like, I mean, USC had that game, seemingly in hand for a while. And, again, I think they're one of the top teams in the country. They're arguably, going to contend for a playoff berth. In terms of Heisman stuff, we're a long way from Tipperary. I mean, there's a lot of football to be played. And you're right, week to week, Hooker made the biggest rise for sure. But Stroud's going to have a lot of opportunities, including the closer against Michigan before the Big Ten championship game, that are going to give him some opportunities to kind of have the last word.
Yeah, and it looks like Ohio State's going to win. They should win out to that Michigan game. Obviously, they're still smarting from last year, losing to the Wolverines. They got that in the big house. And then, depending on the winner of that, who's going to play in the Big Ten championship, you've also got another game for Tennessee in 3 weeks. They play number 1 Georgia between the hedges in Athens. That's going to be Tennessee shouldn't lose between now and then. Georgia shouldn't lose. So that's going to be could possibly 1 versus 3 in that matchup. And then when Ohio State and Michigan play, that could be 2 versus 4. It's a lot of football.
Then they can play again in the playoff and get everybody really angry.
Exactly. Like Alabama and LSU a couple of years ago. Just keep playing over and over and over again. And then Georgia and Alabama as well. This week coming up, just real quick, Gerry, what are the games we should keep an eye on in the college football coming in this week? I know we got Syracuse and Clemson in an undefeated ACC matchup at Death Valley and a couple others. What are you looking for this weekend?
Well, I mean, the big one is in all places, the Pac-12. We got number 9 UCLA at number 10 Oregon.
Yep.
Ducks are a 6-point favorite at home with your man Bo Nix at the helm, looking good. Things are looking good for the Ducks of late. They're getting it done with defense too. Dan Lanning's influence on that side of the ball, I think, has been evident as they've, they had that blowout loss to Georgia to start, but they've righted the ship. And Chip Kelly's really got UCLA going. Their quarterback is, I think, completing almost 75% of his passes or 78% of his passes. The offense is humming, and that's going to be a humdinger, I think. Syracuse, as you mentioned, 14 Syracuse at 5 Clemson. The Tigers are 13.5-point favorite there. I think they take care of business easily there. Dino Babers has done a really nice job keeping Syracuse on track, but I think the track comes unglued a little bit in Death Valley this weekend. And then 17 Kansas State against 8 TCU. TCU has really shocked the world in the last couple of weeks and thrust themselves into the top 10. They're a 3.5-point favorite at home. Kansas State's got Blake Martinez, the former Nebraska quarterback, at the helm. He'll have, the opportunity to pull another upset as he did earlier this year against his former nemesis of Oklahoma. So lots of good football again this weekend coming up.
Yeah, if you would have told me that Oregon would rebound the way they did after getting the doors beat in by Georgia, that part of the season, I didn't know if Oregon was going to be that good. They have proven that they are that good. And if that game was played now, it'd probably be a lot different story. Now that Oregon's gotten its feet up under it, that's going to be one to watch. Obviously, UCLA. Kind of forget sometimes about the Pac-12 when you're on the East Coast in those late games. But, Chip Kelly, this is the offense that they thought he was going to bring everywhere he's ever been. So,
right.
It's good for the game when Chip Kelly can get that offense, because, a lot of people were emulating that when he was at Oregon back, years ago. That was an offense that now a lot of people are running. So keep an eye on that coming up in college football week 8. We're going to move to the NFL week 7 of the NFL coming up. And before we talk about this week, let's talk about the Chiefs-Bills game, the big game of the week. And then right behind that, you had the Cowboys-Eagles. Eagles remain undefeated. Really kind of, took care of the Cowboys. I know it got a little bit closer than the score indicates, but I think we know that Buffalo is the best team, even though they've only had one loss. They shouldn't have lost to Miami, go figure. But in Kansas City, the 2 best teams out of AFC, really wasn't the shootout that I thought it would be. I thought it'd be another 48, 49-point game between the two.
You were finally wrong.
I was wrong on one. I've been wrong once. So, but just 2 great quarterbacks, 2 teams that are just playing at a high level. It was an entertaining game, even though it was a low-scoring game. The first half, kind of looked like the Broncos were playing, the Commanders or something, but it turned on in the second half. So that game, and then the Eagles remaining undefeated. And what about the NFC East? The Giants 5-1. What about the teams from New York? The Jets winning 3 in a row. What's going on?
It's crazy. The Jets ripping the pack, in Green Bay. Trouble in Green Bay.
A lot.
Holy cow. Aaron Rodgers just looks like he's mad at the world. Speaking of mad at the world, Tom recently, like in divorce court, Tom Brady looked like he was ready to kill somebody on the sidelines. I don't know if you saw the video where the adult language was flowing pretty freely, but Tom is not a happy camper after that loss to the Steelers. The Giants topping the Rams, going to 5-1. Probably one of the biggest stories, other than the Eagles being undefeated in football. Eagles over the Cowboys. Cooper Rush finally proves human, makes a couple of mistakes, throws a couple picks.
Right.
Eagles get it done there. We're just seeing a lot of the unexpected week to week in the NFL. Who had Mitch Trubisky coming in to save the day, for example, for the Steelers against the Bucks? It's just crazy. And what you see is, other than Buffalo and perhaps Kansas City and perhaps Philadelphia, anybody can beat anybody on any given Sunday.
I think they made a movie about that. And I think that
Al Pacino, man.
It's a game of inches. I don't know if you've heard that either. Fight and die for that inch. But I think that you said it. Anybody can win. We've seen that. And quarterback play is huge. But when you have a guy coming off the bench, Trubisky comes off the bench. New York doesn't have a quarterback. I mean, Daniel Jones on one leg. What is he going to play? You're taking direct snaps to Saquon Barkley. He got injured, but they're still rolling there. Then you got quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson dropping the football, forgetting how to play quarterback. Guys that you're like, oh, we can count when the game's on the line. Not stepping up. It's I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's just a year or if I'm maybe paying attention to it a little bit more. I don't think we've seen an NFL season like this when it comes to just, I don't know if it's parity or just craziness where you're saying, I'm looking down the sheet. The Falcons, they look like world beaters against the 49ers, a good 49ers team, and their defense steps up, and they're 6-0 against the spread. So what are we doing?
You think you know, but you don't know. That's the truth. I mean, you're going to sit here now and tell me you knew the Giants were going to do this or the Jets were going to do this. You're in the vast minority. Those teams have really shored themselves up. New regimes, in the Jets' case, getting their quarterback back, ready to go. In the Giants' case, new coach, lighting a fire under old quarterback, seemingly. Saquon Barkley back healthy. That's been a big factor there.
Right.
But, who would have predicted, particularly defensively, the way those teams would be able to hang.
Absolutely.
And that has a lot to do with personnel, obviously, but it also has a heck of a lot to do with coaching, and you got to give credit where credit is due.
No question. So coming into this week, by the way, Gerry, just so you know, 10-4 against the spread last week in the NFL. This guy. So it was a good weekend.
Not I said Gerry Ahern finished under 500 against the spot. Tough week of college football. A lot of big numbers that didn't go the right way, but I'm sticking with pretty hanging tough with best bets. Although I was 2-2 this week, because of a couple underperforming offenses. But we'll get back. You got to stay in the game and keep slugging.
Keep swinging, man. Keep chopping that wood. Looking ahead to this week in the NFL. Not a great slate, if I'm being honest, in the NFL. Not like we had last week, where a lot of indications teams are starting to take their bye weeks. Philly's on a bye week. But I think, the game, we got Kansas City and San Francisco on Sunday afternoon. That's a rematch of Super Bowl 54. So you've got that with Mahomes coming in smarting again off that loss to Buffalo. San Francisco took a whooping by Atlanta. So you've got two teams right there trying to bounce back after the loss. The spot is 3 as of now, early in the week. And then you've got some of these lines are kind of head scratching. You got, Jacksonville's a 3-point favorite over New York, over the Giants to open up. And I know the Jaguars at home, but New York playing the way they're playing. You've got some other, Dallas is a 7-point favorite. Dak is back against, Detroit. They'll play there. So you've got I think some of the lines, at least early in the week, I'm looking at the schedule going, hey, there might be some straight up wins, but I don't see a lot of covers here with a 7-point line for, the Raiders over the Texans. The Chargers are 6.5-point favorites over the Seahawks, who are playing pretty well with Geno Smith. You've got Miami with Tua. Will he be back? Will he be healthy? They're 7-point favorites over Pittsburgh. Trubisky's in. I think Kenny Pickett's, under concussion protocol. And then you got the Monday night game. Here, if I got to watch the Broncos in prime time one more time, I'm turning it off. It's terrible. And then now your Monday night game is Chicago at New England.
You don't want to watch Bailey Zappi slinging around, man?
Actually, he looked good.
Awesome.
I picked the Patriots to upset this past week, and he came through for me. But the Bears and the Patriots on a Monday Night Football, with the Patriots being 7.5-point favorites.
The Bears are horrible. The Patriots are kind of fun to watch these days. I mean, they should have one more win than they do. They should have won in Green Bay 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and they should have beat the Commanders too. That's the other thing too with the Commanders. They eked out a win there. Carson Wentz's broken finger, so now you got Taylor Heineke coming back in. Will that offer a spark? Got a lot of backup quarterbacks coming in. Can they do a little something? Because we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's why they play the game, right, Gerry? We got the NBA tipping off this week. NHL's back. Baseball. We haven't even talked about the baseball postseason. A lot going on in the sports world. Keep it here at FrontPageBets.com for all that news. And we're going to talk more college football and NFL next week. But stay here with us. Read all the good stuff that you need. Get your bets in. Make sure you're educated. And we'll keep you entertained, especially with Gerry, and his picks. So mine are just really good. His are just fun.
Are you saying my picks are laughable?
I'm saying they're humorous. For Gerry, I'm Mike. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.